Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our evening Bhagavad Gita circle reading. This evening we continue with chapter 13, verse 17. And the chapter is entitled The Nature, the Enjoyer, and the Consciousness. It will be read and explained to us by His Grace Balabhadra Bhattacharya Prabhu from ISKCON Atlanta. Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila
Jai.
Prabhupada. Hari Bol. So I should start?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Namo Vishnuvadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauda Vandi Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshtarne Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Go Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bhagavad Gita chapter 13 text number 17. Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu vibhaktam ivacha stitam bhuta bhartri chataj geyam grashishnu prabhavishnucha. Although the supersoul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. Purport. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart as the supersoul. Does this mean that he has become divided? No, actually, he is one. The example is given of the sun. The sun at the meridian is situated in its place, but if one goes for 5,000 miles in all directions and asks, quote, where is the sun, end quote, everyone will say that it is shining on his head. In the Vedic literature, this example is given to show that although he is undivided, he is situated as if divided. Also, it is said in Vedic literature that one Vishnu is present everywhere by his omnipotency. Just as the sun appears in many places to many persons, and the Supreme Lord, although the maintainer of every living entity, devours everything at the time of annihilation. This was confirmed in the 11th chapter when the Lord said that he had come to devour all the warriors assembled at Kurukshetra. He also mentioned that in the form of time he devours also. He is the annihilator, the killer of all. When there is creation, he develops all from their original state, and at the time of annihilation, he devours them. The Vedic hymns confirm the fact that he is the origin of all living entities and the rest of all. After creation, everything rests in his omnipotency. And after annihilation, everything again returns to rest in him. These are the confirmations of Vedic hymns. Ito va imani bhutani jayante yenu jatani jivanti yat prayanti abhi sam vishanti tat brahma tat vijigyasaswa. Taittiriya Upanishad 3:1. Text 18. Jyoti samapi taj jyotis tamasa param uchate jnanam geyam jnanagamyam hridhi sarvasya vishtitam. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. Purport. The Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of light in all luminous objects like the sun, moon, and stars. In the Vedic literature, we find that in the spiritual kingdom, there is no need of sun or moon because the effulgence of the Supreme Lord is there. In the material world, that Brahma Jyotir, the Lord's spiritual effulgence, is covered by the Mahat Tattva, the material elements. Therefore, in this material world, we require the assistance of sun, moon, electricity, etc. for light. But in the spiritual world, there is no need of such things. It is clearly stated in the Vedic literature that because of his luminous effulgence, everything is illuminated. It is clear, therefore, that his situation is not in the material world. He is situated in the spiritual world, which is far, far away in the spiritual sky. That is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Aditya Varnam Tamasa Prastat, Svetasvatara Upanishad 3.8. He is just like the sun, eternally luminous, but he is far, far beyond the darkness of this material world. His knowledge is transcendental. The Vedic literature confirms that Brahman is concentrated transcendental knowledge. To one who is anxious to be transferred to that spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. One Vedic mantra, Svetasvatara Upanishad 6.18, says, Tam ha devam atma buddhi prakasham mumukshur vai sharanam aham prapadye. One must surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he at all wants liberation. As far as the goal of ultimate knowledge is concerned, it is also confirmed in the Vedic literature, Tam eva viditwati mrityum eti. Only by knowing him can one surpass the boundary of birth and death. Svetasvatara Upanishad 3.8. He is situated in everyone's heart as the supreme controller. The Supreme has legs and hands distributed everywhere, and this cannot be said of the individual soul. Therefore, that there are two knowers of the field of activity, the individual soul and the supersoul, must be admitted. One's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. This is confirmed in the Svetasvatara Upanishad 3.17. Sarvasya prabhum ishanam sarvasya saranam brihat. That Supreme Personality of Godhead Supersoul is the Prabhu, or Master, of all living entities. Therefore, he is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. So there is no denying the fact that the Supreme Super Soul and the individual soul are always different. Text 19. Iti shetram tata jnanam yeyam choktam samarsata madbhakta etad vigyaya madbhavayopapajyate. Thus, the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Purport. The Lord has described in summary the body, knowledge, and the knowable. This knowledge is of three things: the knower, the knowable, and the process of knowing. Combined, these are called vijnana, or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The monists say that at the ultimate stage, these three items become one. But the devotees do not accept this. Knowledge and development of knowledge mean understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness, but as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activities and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained. Now, to summarize, one may understand that verses 6 and 7, beginning from Maha Bhutani and continuing through Chaitana Dhriti, analyze the material elements and certain manifestations of the symptoms of life. These combine to form the body, or the field of activities. And verses 8 through 12, from Amanitvam through Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam, describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the supersoul. Then verses 13 through 18, beginning from Anadi Matparam and continuing through Riddhi Sarvasya Vishtitam, describe the soul and the Supreme Lord, or the supersoul. Thus, three items have been described: the field of activity, the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the supersoul. It is especially described here that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So, for these devotees, Bhagavad Gita is fully useful. It's useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. In other words, only devotees and no others can understand Bhagavad Gita and derive the desired result. Text number 20. Prakritim purusham cheva vidyanadi ubhavapi vikarams cha gunams chaiva vidi prakriti sambhavan. Material nature and the living entity should be understood to be beginningless. The transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature. Purport. By the knowledge given in this chapter, one can understand the body, the field of activities, and the knowers of the body, both the individual soul and the supersoul. The body is the field of activity and is composed of material nature. The individual soul that is embodied and enjoying the activities of the body is the Purusha, or the living entity. He is one knower, and the other is the supersoul. Of course, it is to be understood that both the supersoul and the individual entity are different manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity is in the category of his energy, and the supersoul is in the category of his personal expansion. Both material nature and the living entity are eternal. That is to say that they existed before the creation. The material manifestation is of the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so also are the living entities. but the living entities are of the superior energy. Both the living entities and the material nature existed before this cosmos was manifested. Material nature was absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mahavishnu, and when it was required, it was manifested by the agency of the Mahatattva. Similarly, the living entities are also in him, and because they are conditioned, they are averse to serving the Supreme Lord. Thus, they are not allowed to enter into the spiritual sky. But with the coming forth of material nature, these living entities are again given a chance to act in the material world and prepare themselves to enter into the spiritual world. That is the mystery of this material creation. Actually, the living entity is originally the spiritual part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but due to his rebellious nature, he is conditioned within material nature. It really does not matter how these living entities or superior entities of the Supreme Lord have come in contact with material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead knows, however, how and why this actually took place. In the scriptures, the Lord says that those attracted by this material nature are undergoing a hard struggle for existence. But we should know it with certainty from the descriptions of these few verses that all transformations and influences of material nature by the three modes are also productions of material nature. All transformations and variety in respect to living entities are due to the body. As far as spirit is concerned, living entities are all the same. Text 21. Karya karanam kartritve hetu prakritir uchite purusha shukta dukanam boktritve hetur uchite. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Report. The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000 different species of life, and these varieties are creations of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity, who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body and not to himself, as he is. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure. But in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasures for the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total, body and instrument senses, are offered by material nature. And as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the supersoul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1 as follows. Dwa, Suparna, Sayuja, Sakaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul and in all circumstances is present as a supersoul, Paramatma. Text number 22. Purusha prakriti stohi bunte prakriti jangunan karanam guna sangosya sarasajoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. Purport. This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desires, the entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on. And in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. How is he put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position that is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the science of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long-cherished desire to dominate material nature. And gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for reading these verses. Pretty powerful. It's
Yes.
as we go deeper, it gets deeper. It gets deeper. If there are any questions from devotees, any thoughts, any reflections, please do unmute yourself and you can ask a question. Prabhu, I have a question and I'm trying to understand it. And
Yes.
if you could please clarify my whatever's in the question. In the earlier verses you read, your Prabhupada says that the super soul is different from the spirit soul. And then how is that connected, Prabhu, with what we have been told we are part and parcel of the Lord? If I'm making sense here.
Yeah. So you're saying the super soul and the individual soul are different, right?
Yes, that's what your Prabhupada said, like 3-4 verses. And then we've heard, well, we're part and parcel.
Yeah. So as he mentioned about the monist, thinking everything becomes one. And we don't accept that philosophy, that everything is one. Our philosophy is Achincha Beta Abeta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. So the living entity, as Srila Prabhupada explained so beautifully in the purports, is eternal along with the energy, material nature. Because the 5 subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita, Ishwar, Jiva, Prakriti, Karma, and Kala. So of the 5, only one is temporary, and that's Kala. I'm sorry, not Kala. Karma. Interaction between the living entity within material nature. That is temporary. The other 4 are eternal, meaning the living entity, material energy. That's why Krishna says, Daiviyesha Gunamayi, this divine energy of mine. So it's all eternal. That means there's no beginning. That means the living entity has been separately manifested time immemorial. There's no there's no time that you can figure out when did it happen? When did the living entity split off from Krishna and become the living entity? It never happened. It never happened. The living entity has Natwevaham Jatu Nasam Aham Neme Janadipa. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. So Krishna's telling Arjuna from the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, I believe it's chapter 2, text 11 or so. He's telling them right there, never was there a time that you, nor I, nor all these kings, we've always existed. So the point is, the super soul, as we have heard in the, second chapter or so, the super soul is manifested within the confines of this material world where the living entity has become rebellious. So the Lord comes with him or expands himself to be with the living entity. First expansion is Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Shidodaksha Vishnu. And then the super soul expands from there. So in the heart of every living entity and in every atom, that super soul is there. But as Srila Prabhupada describes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he compares the super soul in his time in this world to like the Kumbh Mela in India. So when they have Kumbh Mela, there's so many people, millions of people, they set up a whole city. I mean, when you get past 100,000 people, you have a city. I mean, what to speak of millions. And it's described, they have a post office, they have almost like a hospital arrangement, food arrangements, sleeping arrangement, everything. And someone to be like the governor, someone to be in charge. Because when you get that many people together, definitely you need someone in charge. So all of us are in this material world. Who's in charge? Krishna through his expansion of the super soul. So Srila Prabhupada says, when the fair is over, everything's wound up. They break down the post office, they break down the food stalls, they break everything down. And then the governor goes back to his own life. So the super soul is manifested as long as we're here in this world. Think about it. Is there a need for the super soul in the heart of all the cowherd boys in the spiritual world with local Vrindavan? Because Krishna's right there. He's right there in front of them. You know, this is putting me on the spot because when I'm giving class for you next week, there's a discussion about this. It's really got my brain twisted because Parikshit Maharaj is in the womb, and it says the Lord entered the womb and appeared to him. I'm thinking, but wasn't the Lord already there as a super soul? I'm still trying to parse that. So hopefully Vishnu Gadai will be there and Parikshit will be there. We'll try to talk about it and figure it out. But that super soul is a very interesting manifestation of the Lord. He appears like the size of a thumb, depending on proportionally to the body. Like the thumb on my hand is too big for an ant. So comparison to that particular body, he appears in the region of the heart, not in the fleshy, bloody catacombs of the heart, in the region of the heart. I still don't understand that exactly, but that's what it says, in the region of the heart. So the soul, individual soul, is eternal. Never had a beginning, never broke away from the Lord. And as Prabhupada, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada explains, thinking in that way means the Lord is cleavable. I mean, you can cut him up. You can cut the Lord in little pieces. And if you cut him up in little pieces, he diminishes. No, he has unlimited numbers of living entities. He has unlimited numbers of expansions and incarnations. Like I'm looking at his picture right now. He's, let's see if I can show it to you. He's stealing butter. He's playing. That's Krishna enjoying. So all this is going on. Parasya Shaktaya Vividaiva Shrujate Sabhaviki Jana Balakriyacha. All these energies are acting in total sequence, just going like anything. It's almost like perpetual motion, the concept of perpetual motion. The scientists said there's really no such thing. But in the case of the Lord, there is. Things are just going. And he doesn't have to personally deal with it. He doesn't have to deal with each one of us. He in his expansion as a super soul does that. Now, what happens when the devotee becomes a pure devotee? Mahabhagavata, what happens then? Who's controlling all the activities of the living being at that point? Well, it's no longer the material energies, no longer the demigods, it's the Supreme Lord. Is that Supreme Lord in his manifestation of the super soul? Or is it Krishna himself directly coming? That also causes confusion. How can Krishna be with every person? And the number is, you can't even think of the number of living entities. So how can Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan, be with every person? He does it in the form of his super soul. So it's a little bit deep, a little bit complicated, but the main point is the soul is separate and eternal. And the super soul is separate, but not always manifest. He's manifest as long as the material world is going, and he's there with the living entity. When that time is up, it's like, okay, a quick example, when Krishna, with his 16,108 wives, he's with each one separately. Correct so far? We all agree? He's with each wife separately. Narada Muni confirmed that. He went to different palaces. He saw Krishna doing different things with he saw Krishna. He didn't see the super soul. He saw Krishna. So then when Krishna had to go do his work at the Sudharma assembly house as the king of Dwarka, he goes out and all the Krishnas merge into one. And they go to the assembly house. Now that also kind of confuses me. Like, you mean, because it's explained that those Krishnas were the Krishna within them, the heart of the wives, and manifested in front of them, just like he did in front of Dhruva. In front of Dhruva, Dhruva was meditating on the Lord in the heart. Then that meditation broke, and that Lord that was in the heart manifested in front of him. The cowherd boys, when Brahma stole the cows and the calves, the cowherd boys and the calves, Krishna manifested himself. And it's explained that the Lord that was in their heart came out and became the cowherd boys, became the calves, became like that. So the super soul has a very interesting function within the creation of the Lord, but he is the Lord, but he's the expansion of the Lord. But the Lord has different expansions, and each one there's different categories. And we won't get into that because that gets a little bit drawn out. But so that's the basic idea. Soul is eternal. Super soul is separate, but the super soul is not always manifest because he's here to be with the living entity, as Srila Prabhupada said in one of these purports. Throughout his many transmigrations, the super soul stays with him, guiding him, reminding him. In your last life, you wanted to be naked. As Prabhupada said, you want to be nudie, stand naked. Okay, become a tree. Or you wanted to eat all kinds of nasty things. Okay, become a hog. And then he explained that in that body of the hog or the tree, now you're subjected to that limitation until you become Krishna conscious. Then we rise above the limitations. We begin to perceive our eternality. Still, we don't understand how we got here. Prabhupada said, don't worry about that. How you got here. What you should think, how to get out. You want to be a philosopher and try to figure out how you got here? Fine. Take another few lifetimes. Bahunam Janmante. Take many lifetimes. Try to figure it out. Or just jump on the train. Get on the train and just go back to Godhead. There's a beautiful song by a famous musician, Curtis Mayfield. And when I was an entertainer, this was our closing song. People get ready. There's a train coming. You don't need no ticket. Just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesel humming. Faith is the key. So like that, just get on board this train going back to Godhead. How we got here, the knowledge is explained, as Prabhupada is saying in his 13th chapter. Very powerful. We just read 8 through 12, right? 8 through 12, yeah. And he talked about Amanitvam. This knowledge is so clear. Just take the time and look at it. We are eternal. We're being conditioned by the material energy. How do we rise above the material energy? You engage in devotional service consistently, practicing. Prabhupada said you keep practicing. And then one day, one day we rise through the modes. Like Rita Anandamaj explained it so nice. When you're on the ground in an airplane, and then when you get on the plane goes up, and it goes through that turbulence in the clouds. We all know what that is. We all get scared. So, but once it goes up through the turbulence, then it just collides. You can see everything. You can see for miles and miles and miles. So we're just about there. We're not there yet. We just keep practicing. And then we'll, by the grace of the Lord, understand who we are, our eternal position in reference to the Lord who's within the heart of every living being. And we'll understand who he is as a super soul. and we'll understand the source of the super soul. Now, that term, the source, is another confusing. That means this thing started from this thing. So the source of the living entity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yeah, everyone says, yeah. So that means that we started at some point? No. Achincha beta abeta tattva. Always keep that in mind. So I'm sorry to go so long, but that's a very important question.
Thank you, Prabhu, for really explaining that. Yes, it's clear now. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is definitely the science of the soul.
Yeah.
Completely like a science, and it's really, really scientific. It's not just religion, so to speak, or sentimentalism. It's really scientific. Thank you for addressing that.
I'm trying, but
questions?
I'm not perfect in understanding, but that's the limit of my understanding. My pay grade is about here. Some things are above my pay grade, so I try.
Mine is way down, Prabhu.
But that's why we're all together. We can help each other.
Yeah.
None of us should act like we're some authority. It's so dangerous for devotees to stand there like an authority. The authority is Srila Prabhupada, who's standing on the authority of the Vedas, period. Our only authority is to repeat what we've heard. So look like, is that Colby Smith?
Yes, Colby. Go ahead, Colby.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please
Hare
accept
Krishna.
my humble obeisance.
Accept my humble obeisance. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada. I was curious. Suppose a person is perhaps deeply spiritual. Maybe they have a sense of being a part and parcel of something that maybe they just don't understand, or maybe they're just hesitant to subscribe to a particular faith.
Right.
Is there a type of mercy that they could receive at the moment of death, or are they just bound to the laws of karma like the rest of us? Thank you.
No, that's an excellent question. In other words, the answer is there's so much benefit in them practicing sincerely their process. Srila Prabhupada confirmed that over and over. Can a Christian make spiritual advancement? Yes. Can a Muslim? Yes. Can a whoever, right? If they follow the principles, because the principles of the scriptures, Quran, Bible, Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Vedas, if you look at the principles, like you just read in this chapter, verses 8 through 12, those are principles. And these principles you can identify within a person, because think about this. This whole caste system concept, which has destroyed India over centuries, it's terrible because it's based on where you're born. So if you're born in a certain caste, you cannot rise above that. Krishna says, Chaturvana Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagas. I created the system. Okay? And then anyone by quality and work can rise above his so-called position. So if a Christian is practicing the principles that are defined by Krishna and defined in other scriptures as well, absolutely they're making advancement. Now, will they go back to Godhead this lifetime? I don't even know if I'm going back to Godhead this lifetime. Seriously. And in some people I've met, I wish I had those qualities. I hate to give mundane examples, but I saw a documentary the other night about what they call Tibetan yogis. And it chronicled the lives of several Tibetan yogis. And in fact, one of the most renowned ones of those yogis was also there. And I was just watching how serious these people were, men and women, very serious about their practice. They have a thing they call a retreat. See, what we sometimes call a retreat is going on a cruise and having a kirtan retreat or going to a beautiful place, which is nice. Don't get me wrong. That's great stuff. Like Sadhu Sangha is a great retreat. Their retreat is 2 years in the Himalayan mountains, living in a cave, doing their mantras and yoga. Now, I'm not recommending we do that, but the seriousness, the commitment of those people inspired me to go deeper into my chanting. My point there is that they're practicing good principles, as in the 12th chapter, we've already passed that. When Arjuna asked the question, which is better? Someone who's meditating on your personal form or someone who worships the impersonal form? And Srila Prabhupada, Krishna also describes this in the verses. that these people, because they're practicing good principles, they're making advancement. Eventually they'll get there. So Dr. Kobe, the point is, if they're practicing authentic, recognizable principles that you and I should know, we don't know if they are or not. If we don't know, we need to know the principles ourselves. Then if we know them, we can recognize them. And if we recognize them, we should take the time and encourage these people. Do not disturb the minds of quote unquote materialistic people, forcing them to try to come up to our platform. You should act in such a way that those people get a sense of how to act better in their own position in life. So again, the direct answer to what you're saying is that it's a big fat yes. If they're practicing their principles properly, they will make advancement. Will they go back to Godhead this lifetime? Who am I to say or you to say? We don't know. Krishna can do anything he wants. So I just feel so excited when I meet someone of a different faith who's truly following that faith. I'm just inspired when I see that. And I totally encourage them. Quick example, Prabhupada was meeting with one priest or minister of, was it France? I can't remember exactly. So he said his prayer, "O Mary, Mother of God, please have mercy upon me." Something like that. It's in the Science of Civilization. O Mary, Mother of God, please have mercy upon me. And then Prabhupada said, "What is that? Say it again." And he said the prayer again. And Prabhupada said, "That is very nice. That is very nice." Now, you think Prabhupada was just being, blowing smoke at this guy? Prabhupada didn't blow smoke at people. He was very sincere. That is very nice. Why? Because he's making advancement. So, Dr. Kobe, we should follow those examples and appreciate, respect everyone's level of faith and act in such a way ourselves that we can help them elevate even more. So I hope that makes sense and helps a little bit.
Oh, very much. Thank you, Haribol.
Thank you, Prabhu.
That was a nice question, Colby. Thank you for asking.
Very
that.
nice question. Yeah.
Very nice.
Very compassionate question. I can sense where he's coming from. Very compassionate. Devotees should not want to put other people down. Oh, we're better than everybody. Really? Mm-hmm. The philosophy is, I don't know about me. I may not be better than, the philosophy is amazing, but am I better than everyone just because I, put on some tilak? Of course, that's really nice that we put on tilak and all these different things. But we're now talking about principles, mm-hmm. the qualities, the work, the activity. That's what distinguishes, us from the so-called lower classes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Any last minute questions? Any thoughts? Any realizations, takeaways? If there isn't, would like to remind devotees to please join us tomorrow morning with Chandramali Swami at 8 o'clock. He's still in America.
Wow.
Somewhere. So he's in our time zone. So he'll be on tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. So we request devotees to please join us for his class. Until then, thank you so much, Balabhadra Prabhu. Vanchakraptibhyascha Kripasanavebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Lord Balaram ki jai.
Tomorrow, yes. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Have a wonderful evening.